Welcome to another episode of the Field of 68's off-season grades. My name is Rob Dauster, and I have with me today none other than Clemson Tiger legend Terrence Oglesby, and we are going to be breaking down a team that I think I would is probably fair to say that T.O. would have loved to play on back in his day, and that is the Alabama Crimson Tide. Threes, layups, nothing else. And for my money, T.O., I think that this Alabama team is I would say they're the best team in college basketball for me heading into next season. Not only did they get Mark Sears back, not only did they fend off overtures from the University of Kentucky to keep Nate Oats in Tuscaloosa, but they brought in a whole bunch of shooters who we'll get to, as well as the one piece that they were missing last year, and that is an elite rim protector and rebounder in Cliff Omoruyi. I think this Alabama team, national title or bust this year for the Tide. What do you make of their offseason, T.O.?
That's kind of where I'm at too. There's a lot of talent on this roster. You look up and down. Mark Sears coming back. He's got to be preseason, if not favorite, but in the running for National Player of the Year. I mean, the way he ended last season was special. He shows how he can control such an up-tempo offense and what they do. They play so fast and they come at you in waves. This Alabama team is going to be even better this year, which is crazy to think because they just made the Final Four. Mark Sears is terrific. Grant Nelson, I think he's going to take a step this year. And the young man, Jaron Stevenson, you saw it in spurts last year. I didn't realize that sucker was 6'11". Just athletic, can move, can step out and shoot it a little bit. So just the returning pieces there to go along with Latrell Wrightsell Jr., like there's enough here to get excited about. That's only 4 of them. Then you throw in Omoruyi coming from Rutgers, elite rim protector, who they got on a bargain compared to what he was offered. And then Aiden Holloway comes up from Auburn, who's a shot-creating guard who's going to hang around for a little bit, play behind Mark Sears, play with Mark Sears. I think that's going to be a growing experience for him. And I think he's going to be better in that system than he was at Auburn. Not to say he didn't fit well at Auburn, but you get what I'm saying. I think the up-tempo, quick decision-making is going to be good for him. And then you add some other pieces there. This freshman class with Darian Reed, Aiden Sherrill, LeBaron Philon, and then Nasir Cunningham, talented, man. Reed especially is just a modern day what every coach wants. Big, switchable, super athletic, enough skill to make things happen. And then Aiden Sherrill, I think he was underrated and undervalued a little bit by a lot of recruiting services. I think he does a lot of really nice things on the floor. 6'10", can pop, can shoot. A lot of skill. How's it going to translate immediately? I don't know. I just know the natural talent is certainly there, and it's 12 deep. I mean, this team is really, really good.
Yeah, the thing that I love about them is they leaned all the way into 2 things. One, exactly how they want to play. It's like they identified the guys that will work specifically in the system that Nate Oats runs and went out and got those dudes. Chris Youngblood, shooter, scorer, playmaker on the perimeter. Houston Millette, terrific shooter, right? You got the guy that's going to be the rebounder and the rim protector in and around the basket in Cliff Omoruyi. Aiden Holloway is a guy that can create off the bounce and can back up Mark Sears. And you surround them with a bunch of young talent that might be there for more than 1 year, and Darian Reed, the freshman class you just mentioned. And they also bring a bunch of dudes back, so you get that roster continuity. Mark Sears is back. Latrell Wrightsell is back. Jaron Stevenson is a guy that has I think, a real chance to be like a breakout player in college basketball this year. He's going to pop on a lot of those NBA boards. He's going to be one of those guys when you look at those 2025 preseason mock drafts that a lot of people slot in like the 20s range. And then Grant Nelson, like it's just everything that you want out of a program in terms of building it for longevity, they went out and they did. I don't know if I think you can make the argument that Alabama is probably the healthiest program in college basketball right now when you consider that their funding is probably a little bit bigger than what UConn's is, if that makes sense.
It's a relatively new funding situation too, because prior to this year and this summer, the NIL was good, but it wasn't great. And they were able to get the right kind of guys for what they needed. Now you make a Final Four, things can change a little bit in Tuscaloosa. So the roster certainly reflects that. But my goodness, just the talent level. The guy that I've kind of focused in on, I'm really excited to see how he goes in year 2, because I feel like he got a lot really quickly as far as hype is concerned, as far as he comes into a new program, people are expecting the world from him. Grant Nelson's going to settle in, and I think he's going to have a much better second season at Alabama than he did the first year. But as far as being a healthy program, there's no question about it. You have returning players, you have a strong recruiting class, guys that you hope you can hold on to for more than a year, and then the transfers that really fit what you can do. And with how many years do some of these guys have? I know Holloway has what, 3 years of eligibility
3
after
years
this
left.
one.
Yeah.
Amoria's done. Some of these other guys, there is room for improvement, and they're guys that eventually, Rob, like in that freshman class, if they hang around, are going to be really, really good college players. So you have that continuity to go along with the blend of elite college level talent.
Yeah, the one thing, just to circle back on your point about Grant Nelson, the one thing when we were down there in January that we kept hearing was he doesn't realize how good he is yet. Right. And I think like there's a level of going out and putting up 19 and 15 on UConn in the Final Four, going out, what was it, 24, 12, and 5 blocks against North Carolina in the, what was that? Was that the Sweet 16 that
Yeah,
Alabama beat North Carolina?
it was.
Um, when you have performances like that on those stages, I think there's a level of confidence that you develop. And I do think, I don't know if he's, maybe a lack of confidence is the wrong word, but realizing he's capable of more than what he was producing is something where sometimes it's hard for guys that go from the mid-major level up to kind of figure that part of it out.
And to see success when you're not playing all that great. Like even when they played against Clemson in the Elite Eight game, like he didn't have a great game, but towards the end, he made plays when he needed to make plays. I think he's going to have a monster second season there now that he's comfortable, now that he realizes he belongs, and now he's got some alpha syndrome, being a senior on a team full of guys that are talented, but now he's comfortable. I think he's going to have a big season.
Whether you are a world-class athlete or a podcaster like me, we all understand the importance of mental and physical well-being and proper recovery for top-notch performance. After a 6-month season loaded with cross-country travel, I can promise you that proper recovery is a priority for me these days. That's why I'm excited that Unified Healing is sponsoring this episode of the Field of 68. Unified Healing is a new and super innovative global network of wellness centers powered by Energy Enhancement System, or the EE system. If you haven't heard of the EE system yet, you'll want to listen up. This technology promotes wellness, deep relaxation, purification, and rejuvenation. Whether you're here in New Jersey or at one of the hundreds of other locations across the globe, access to a center is easy and affordable. If you're interested in experiencing the EE system technology for yourself, go to unifiedhealing.com/unified68 to learn more and find a center near you. That's UNIFYD healing.com/UNIFYD, the number 6, the number 8. No material or testimonials on the Unified Healing website are intended to be viewed as medical advice or as a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition or treatment, and before undertaking a new healthcare regimen, including the EE system.
All right, we'll get into some of the other subjects and topics that we had here in 1 second, but I want to poke a couple of quick holes, right? For most of these, when we talk about these teams, it's like, what can they do to reach that level? What can they do to make a Final Four, to win a title? We know what Alabama's ceiling is this year. So I want to ask you this. Are you concerned at all about the fact that there aren't any obvious NBA talents, especially on the perimeter for this group? Because I feel like if you go back and look at teams that have won national titles over the course of the last decade and a half, 2 decades, they have pros at the point or on the wing or at the shooting guard. There are pros somewhere. Where's the NBA talent on this roster, and is that something that worries you?
I would argue that Darian Reed and Aiden Sherrill are NBA level guys. I
Fair
would.
enough.
Nasir Cunningham, he's also going. He's a top 75 player in the class. Early in his high school career, he was rated number 1 in the country. I thought that was unfair. They saw how tall he was, how athletic he was, and didn't realize, hey, this is a catch and shoot guy who's super athletic and finish lobs. He's more of a role player than anything else. I think he could develop into a 3-and-D guy much later down the line. But I do think there's some NBA talent here, but does that necessarily, outside of UConn, does that predict success at the college level? And I'd venture to say no. It is great to have NBA level talent. Don't get me wrong, but as far as success, you want that mixture of young talent and older guys. Does it worry me? No, because I feel like when you have a guy like Mark Sears, who's not going to be an NBA guy that fits the college game well, he does all those things that you want those NBA level talented guys to do. Shot creation for others, your settle down point guard. The only thing that scares me about this Alabama team, something happens to Mark Sears. That's the only thing that scares me about the roster that they've put together.
Why?
Because he's a guy that kind of makes the world revolve. Like for everything Alabama does revolves around Mark Sears, at least right now, because his ability to create, they get in a bit of a panic. They have a lot of pieces around him. They have other guys that can do certain things. Don't get me wrong. I feel like Aiden Holloway could develop into that kind of guy, but they have these big, long shot making wings. Maybe not somebody that's going to be able to create off the bounce for themselves with consistency. I feel like Mark Sears can do that. Grant Nelson might be able to do that this year, but in order to push the pace like you really want, you got to have that guard to do that. Aiden Holloway will do it. He won't do it like Mark Sears. So I feel like Mark Sears is the key cog for this entire team. That's a pretty obvious point. But at the same time, something happens to him. I'm not saying there's a monster drop off in talent, but there is a monster drop off in terms of experience and a guy that's willing to let the ball go a little bit.
All right. So for X Factor, I wrote down the X Factor for this team is Cliff Omoruyi. And the reason I put that is because if you look at Alabama's two best teams in the Nate Oats tenure, it was 2023 and 2021, when they were among the league leaders in defensive 3-point field goal percentage, in rim protection and block percentage, and in steal percentage. And I think that all of that stuff coincides with the fact that in those years, they had a guy at the rim that could block shots. They had somebody that was going to erase or pick up defensive rebounds and end possessions, and would allow you on the perimeter to go out and pressure a little bit, because you didn't have to worry about getting beaten off the dribble, because someone could, if you're throwing up a layup at the rim, they're going to put the ball through the backboard. And they have that now with Cliff Omoruyi. So I think if he is the guy that he was last year, all of a sudden we're looking at a team that goes from outside the top 100 on Ken Palm's defensive efficiency to a team that could be like, what, maybe top 30, top 40. And I think that's good enough for them to be a national title winning team with how good this team is going to be on the offensive end.
Well, he's certainly important, and they're going to have him doing a lot more of what he's going to do at the NBA level too. A lot of rim running, a lot of ball screen rolling, a lot of lob threat stuff. That's what he's certainly capable of. And even though he has this cut up frame, he looks kind of long and wiry. That dude's strong too. So I think he's going to be able to guard the majority of 5 men in college basketball. I'm excited to see what he does. How they use him differently according to the game defensively. That's going to be fun to see. But as far as my X factor is concerned, we know what Mark Sears is. We know what Omoruyi is going to bring. I feel like if you can get Grant Nelson around that 15 to 17 point a game mark, I don't know how you guard him, because that's a lot of playmaking, shot creation, and shot making from him, Mark Sears, and then you have guys around him. So I think Grant Nelson, if he's able to have a monster year and some monster games, much like he had in the NCAA tournament this past season, you're in for a special year in Tuscaloosa.
Clear-cut best team in the SEC for you?
Right now, yes. Right now, yes. Just because of all the talent, the system that they're running, and just the puzzle pieces. You've known me for 3 years now, Rob. Like, I'm a big puzzle piece guy, and how everybody fits around each other. It's a really exciting team to watch and keep up with this year.
Yeah. Where do you stand on them as national title contenders, national title favorites? Is that what the goal has to be this year? Like, if they make it, let's say they win the SEC and make it to the Elite Eight, is that a successful season for this Alabama team with what they've put together?
In my mind, anytime you make it to the second weekend, it's a success, especially at a traditional football school. I will never see failure in an Elite Eight appearance. I do think that Alabama is good enough to win a national championship. Barring a statistical anomaly of a game by an opposing team, they shouldn't lose many. But that's the beauty of the NCAA tournament, right? Like, one game could go awry. And then you're struggling because guys are hitting shots, and some of the shots that you normally make aren't going in. So if you want to rely on the analytics, much like Alabama does heavily, there are anomaly games. So you're hoping for no anomaly come the NCAA tournament, which is really hard to predict. But if they live true to what their values are, and that's analytics driven, they should win a lot of games and very much should be in line for a national championship.
Yeah, I wouldn't complain about seeing an Alabama UConn rematch in San Antonio this season. I think that would be a lot of fun. All right.
Great Final Four city.
Yes, I actually really like San Antonio as a Final Four city because everything is walkable. The Tex-Mex is unbelievable down there,
Yep.
and the Riverwalk. The only problem is once you get to like Sunday, it gets so crowded. There's just, I feel like I'm going to get thrown into the river at some point, and you do not want to be in that water. Off-season grades, give it to me. What do you got?
How do you not go? I'm going strictly an A. Strictly an A. I'm not going A plus because you don't know what's happening, but I'm giving them an A for the pieces they put around, the types of freshmen that they brought in too. I'm a big fan of Reed and what he brings. Aiden Sherrill, big fan of his and his ability to space the floor. How do you not go A or A plus? Because
how do you not go A plus?
I'm going A plus.
Grader,
you know what?
man.
I take back everything I just said. A plus. You have to love what they did as far as plugging in pieces, grabbing Cliff Omoruyi when he had substantial offers from other schools, and not saying he took a ton less because he got paid, but to be able to grab him out of the portal, going A plus there with Alabama.
You know what happened right there? You're like, do I really want to give an A?
Yeah,
I'm
trying to leave myself a little wiggle room in case it just flounders, but I don't think it will. I mean, they're too good. They're too talented in the system that they're running in Tuscaloosa. I mean,
let's think about
really
this.
Tough to guard.
Tio, let's think about this. You bring back a first-team All-American and a potential preseason National Player of the Year in Mark Sears.
Yep.
You add the best player at the one position that you were missing more than anything else last season. You get back all of these like role players that help make Alabama basketball, right? You go out and you get 3 other transfers that fit into your system perfectly. And oh, by the way, your coach said thanks but no thanks to the University of Kentucky. Your basketball coach at Alabama said thanks but no thanks. Like, what else do you have? What went wrong?
Nothing went wrong. I actually think too, like the Chris Youngblood pickup, like it's not getting talked about enough. Like Aaron Estrada was really good, but he was more of a volume guy. Youngblood did it with north of 40% shooting for the last 3 seasons. This wasn't an anomaly either. Like this guy can really go. He might fit Mark Sears better than what Aaron Estrada did last year. A plus. How do you go anywhere else?
Yeah, I'm there with you. Listen, this has been the offseason grades for Alabama. We're going to be rolling out about 45 of these over the course of the next 2 months. So stay here on the Field of 68.